Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My very dear friends, students, colleagues, and of course the learners, the teachers, the mentors, the peers. Thank you for your continued support. And I think the time which we could get in this COVID-19 lockdown period was one of the best utilization of the time. And I would like to share with you before we start with the lecture that how have I managed my life and how to become very optimistic out of this highly distressful situation. So we offer the prayers at home due to the lockdown, and almost 4 to 5 times we offer the prayers with the Jamaat, and I try to give the Jamaat with my driver, my sons, and my family. My family, the females are normally upstairs at the house portion of the building, whereas me and my son and driver, we are downstairs. So we try to create a Jumaat in environment, and Alhamdulillah, we offer 2 Jumas also at our home. The second very regular activity which I do from almost 10 to 11 is basically the jogging and the running. And at a usual, I walk for about 6 to 7 kilometers in the morning and then for 1 or 2 kilometers in the afternoon or evening. And this is, I really try to balance out my life. At an average, we have 2 to 3 hours meetings, our classes. I have a class with my BTech students, and then I have a couple of meetings with my staff, deans, and the faculty. And Alhamdulillah, then I also find some time to record 1 or 2 videos for the general public and learners. And then I find some time to author some articles for Urdu and English newspapers also. So Alhamdulillah, I think this time which we have got as a lockdown period has been one of the most useful period of my life. Now coming to today's lecture, which is basically part of the leadership theories and leadership series, the changes which are coming across the world over the last 2 to 3 decades. And now certainly with this pandemic of COVID-19, there will be a great change coming in the world after the COVID-19, and we have a lot of challenges. I think we would discuss that sometime else, but certainly the changes is part of our life. I mean, we have been born in a time or in a class of society which has been mostly underprivileged in the sense that it was a time when there was no computing, no computers, no networks. The correspondence and communication was mostly through the letters, which used to reach in 1 to 2 weeks. And for international letters, we used to, expect something like 1 month. Then the resources were not very much available to the people. People were mostly underprivileged, and the life was very simple in the sense that people were very contented. But in the last 30 years, and this continued, I believe, towards the end of 80s, or early 90s or 80s, I remember that when I was doing my matric in 1980, it was really very simple and very undemanding kind of life. People were contented with very ordinary resources. And then we have a jump in when we come to the early 90s, and the life style, the priorities, the internationalization and globalization becomes part of life. Then we have the computers in the early 80s, and then in the early 90s, we have the networks and internet, and then the cyber highway and all these came in life, and the life was becoming really uh, very challenging to adopt to the changes. There was a belief that initially the knowledge doubled in 12 years, maybe, and then within 80s and 90s, we thought that the knowledge doubled in 12 years, and then early this century, we thought that the knowledge is doubled every 12 months, and then 12 hours, and maybe times comes that within next 60 minutes or even lesser than that, the knowledge would double. So the bigger challenge for all of us is to adopt to these different kinds of changes. These changes are challenging, but certainly this is the challenges and the changes are part of our life. So it's very natural that we have to understand and we have to learn the way in which we can adopt to these changes. The discussion of today on the change management would then lead us to the new theory of leadership that is called adaptive management theory. And this is one of the emerging and maybe one of the latest theory of management in which leadership, in which the technological advancements and the challenges which we are facing in the world, the dynamic and very fastly changing world. I will start my presentation with the holy words of Quran, in which the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that لا يغير الله بقوم حتى يغير بأنفسهم. I'm sorry if there is any, Allah forgive us if there is any mistake in the words, but certainly the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran has said that no nation can have the change unless they have their own will and their own endeavors to change it. And in another place, Allah ta'ala subhanahu wa ta'ala says that لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى, that for insan there is nothing else but his own struggle. And in another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَنْ سَعْيُوا فَلَا سَوْفَ لِنُرِيَهُ, I think, again I will get forgiveness, that whoever would work hard, the God will give the returns very soon. So same is the case with the change management, that we can have different kinds of organizations, for example, highly static organizations, which are not ready to adapt to the changes. And then there are some organizations who are in between, that they are anticipating changes, they're adopting to changes one way or the other way, but in a very slow pace. And then we have the next group of organizations which are highly dynamic and dealing with the complex tasks. And their challenge to the adaptation of the changes is really very high, and they are trying to catch up with these changes. So the change management basically is ذلك بأن الله لم يكن مغير نعمة أنعمها على قوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وأن الله بصير عليم. And this is the holy verse. I'm sorry I couldn't recite it completely. And because Allah will never change the grace which they had bestowed on a people until they change what is in their own souls. And verily Allah is who heard and know all things. So change can either challenge or threaten us. Your belief pave way for your way to success or block. So if you believe in the change to be a positive, then certainly it's bringing change, positive. There is nothing wrong with change if it is right in right direction. Church, nothing is permanent with change. And one of the things I learned when I was negotiating was that until I change myself, I couldn't change others. So you have to change Nelson Mandela, the global leader and the one of the Nobel laureates. And he was definitely benefactor to the African into the place. And he says that first you have to change yourself. Adopt or perish is ever its nature inexorable imperative. The Wells says that you have to adopt, otherwise you will perish. Any change, even for the better, is always accompanied by drawbacks and discomforts. So even a good change will be resisted by the team, and this will bring some discomfort to the people. To exist is change, to change is to mature, and to mature is to go on creating oneself endlessly happy works. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself, Leo Tolstoy. Both tears and sweets are salty, but they render a different result. Tears will give sympathy, will get sympathy, with sweat will get you change. The world has changed, yet it is the only thing that has brought progress. Charles Catherine. The first step towards change is awareness, the second step is acceptance. Brendan. The most useless are those who never change those through the years. James Berry. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. To keep our faces towards change and behave like free spirits in the presence of fate is the strength undefeatable. Helen Keller, you see that she was a great lady who defeated the physical disability of blindness, and then she orchestrated a new a way of teaching the blind people through the bridal education system. And she once said that the self-pity is one of the worst enemy of the humans. Now, the change is basically a process in which we would like to go to a future state through a transition process. This may be of any kind, maybe the capacity of human beings, maybe the technology of the organization, maybe the results, performance. So we would like to see any kind of change. Now, why these changes are becoming very frequently, and why the changing and the dynamism is becoming the most challenging part of our life? The first is globalization. And you could see that the globalized world in the COVID-19 could spread like flame of the jungles and forests, just because we are living in a globalized world where the people are moving from one country to the other country in an unprecedented fast way. So this led to the creation of this, the transmission of this COVID-19. The technology, yes, I just gave you a brief of the technologies and what technologies we are expecting in the coming years. We started with in the 40s and 50s, there was the earlier generation of computer like abacus, and this was just a machine which was used by purely the people who were having highly skilled, and machine language was used most of the time for the use. And then we came in 70s and 80s with the personal computers, and the microprocessor chip was designed through the very large scale integration. And this brought a technological transformation in the last 30 years. And then is coupled with the internet and sensors, and all these together is now creating the artificial intelligence, the nanotechnology, the hybrid kind of things. The third is merger and acquisition. This is another trend in the globalization, that since the competition is becoming very high, so the smaller organizations are merging, and they are acquired by the larger organization, and they are creating their competitive advantage through this process. The workplace diversity is another issue. We are no more working in formal offices. There are tele offices, mobile offices, home offices, and things like that. So the virtual organization and virtual platforms are becoming more prominent, and we have to be adopted to these. The work-life balance is another challenge, because the involvement of the human beings in the work has been so deeply that the family life is affected, and there is a need to balance out the family and work life. And we could see on this in the COVID-19, that for the first time we are now restrained to homes and houses, and we are really feeling that what are the challenges of our housewives and the people who are in the houses. High rate of change. Yes, the change is something which cannot be, cannot be gauged, or it cannot be measured. You can think of any. I mean, you are now in the terabyte, in the giga and tera, and I don't know, you maybe the petabyte. So the changes is happening in an astounding rate, and the competition is never ending. I mean, from your street to the global marketplace, you see that there is high competition amongst the organization, corporates, businesses. You name any sector of business, you would see that there is a very high level of competition. And finally, this has brought definitely ethical and social responsibility on us as a global citizen, because the access of the people to the information is no doubt very easy, but certainly the biggest challenge is the authenticity of the information, the authenticity of your personal behavior, and so on. And this brings definitely a lot of responsibility on us as a ethical and social responsibility. Now, the fact is that change is inevitable. I mean, you have to change or perish. Change is uncomfortable. Even at home, many times you feel that even your own family is not adapting to the change you want to bring. Change is disruptive. It would disturb your normal life. You would not be able to, for example, the COVID-19 and the technology platforms which we are trying to implement are creating a lot of disruption in our lives. It was not the case that we would sit in the home for hours and hours and hours. So this is generally certainly disrupting our life, and the complexity of the change is increased. I already submitted that the rate of change is very high now. Now the people response to the change is definitely awkward. Nobody would be happy with the change. Self-conscious people would be feeling kind of self-consciousness. Think first about what they have to give up. So when you talk of the change, the people, instead of realizing the strength of the adaptation of the change, would like to focus more on what they have to give up in case of such challenge. They would feel alone, definitely. They may not be handle it. Their readiness to the change may not be very good, and they would try to revert back to the previous comfort zone which they had before that change. Now the forces which are playing a very high rate, that are economic, social, organizational, environmental, and legal. So this change is coming. The internal transition, maybe the psychological process to shift behavior, let go to old and embrace the new. So there are various challenges. Now, when we look at the change cycle of transition, it's very interesting. That whenever there's a change and you try to bring some change, for example, if you want to bring a technology solution or technology platform in teaching and learning, and this is you as a vice chancellor, as a dean or a head of department would like to bring this change, that the students should be facilitated through the online platforms of learning management system, then definitely the first thing would come is a denial. The people would deny that this can happen. But this is very natural. As a leader, you have to be very courteous, very amicable, and try to make the people understand that this change can happen. So the denial can come from the team, from the faculty, from the management, from the IT team, from the student, from the society, from the parents of the students, and everybody around. And they will have different kinds of estimates about this. I mean, different kind of word that first it will be over soon. So they would try to make an understanding by the people that this change cannot happen for a longer period. This wouldn't happen. I mean, it cannot happen. The change which the vice chancellor, the dean wants to bring is not possible. Apathy, people would not be taking interest. Numbness, they would be sitting in the meeting, but they would be playing with their cell phones. They may be playing with their laptops, and they will not be giving any attendance or attention to the presentation. So this is very natural. They will ignore your instructions, your emails. They would not respond, and they would say, "Oh, we know it cannot happen, but it is just a waste of time." Now, when we in this particular phase, without I mean creating any resistance to the team members, the most important is to inform them, to communicate them through different modes, and motivate them to accept this change. So this will continue, very fair communication with them, very good information. So you have to use multiple information portals, not only the emails. You would try to give the online lectures. You would try to give them some social media platforms. You may write some articles in the newspapers about this change, and you may even sometimes directly talk to the individuals about the expectations you have from this change. So this I mean, information, and at the same time, you try to motivate the people who are feeling apathy towards this change, and try to make them, I mean, giving them appreciation, recognitions, and things like that, and that would generally create the motivation. Now, the bigger, I mean, more tougher condition for the leaders is that when you are going through this process, some people may resist you. Now, this resistance can become, in many ways, it's a natural process that the people who are not ready to that change would try to sometimes even resist that. Initially, they were denying it, that it cannot happen, but then they would use different, they may be using some media against you. They may be using the newspaper against you. They may be even sometimes using the religious leaders, the political leaders, even the government may be instigated against the change. So in that particular case, the resistance may come in many ways, and you as a leader would have to be very careful, emotionally stable, and you have to be intelligently and tactfully dealing with this kind of challenges. So the people may have the sense of loss of control, that if this change would occur, we would not be able to cope with that, and we will not be then able to do our jobs. They will be sometime concerned about their competency. For example, if you are talking about the online classrooms and learning management system, the people who are not very good expert of the technology may be feeling that they are not competent enough to go with this kind of change, and then they will be losing the focus and direction. They will not be ready to focus, and then maybe some people are highly disturbed with this condition, and they feel highly challenged and highly in problems, and they may not be able to sleep. They may go to the psychiatrists, they may go to the medical doctors, and they may sometimes even take the medicines to sleep. Now, this is this can happen even to us. This can happen to even to me as a team leader. So this is not very unusual. This is very natural. I could see that a lot of people out of this COVID-19 are highly depressed now, and they are having the psychological depressions. So my request to all of them is to keep them engaged and to be resorting to the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recite the Holy Quran, and offer their praise 5 times, and revert to the God and offer their supplications so that God can be more merciful upon us. Sometimes the people may come out and fight with you, and sometimes they may express their anger at the meetings. They may even challenge sometimes you in the meetings in front of other colleagues. But this is happening very, very naturally. So you have to be very tactful, emotionally stable, and have to be very cool. And then sometime the people may withdraw from the team and committees which you constitute for making the change, and they would surrender. They would sometimes regret, and they would sometimes not be available for playing their roles in these teams. Now, under this kind of situation, you have to be very careful in listening. You listen, and then try to share your thoughts, your expectations with them, and try to understand their concerns. Don't leave them in the lurch. Don't leave them frustrated. Try to keep them followed, and see that how can they be more satisfied with this kind of. Now, this situation is really very challenging because everybody would have got its own problem, but you can then develop a team of peers, senior mentors, who can then console and counsel such kind of people, and gradually their understanding is improved about the change. Now, the next is exploration, that while you are doing with the resistance, some people, which are the top leaders, the future leaders, and who can be the part of your leader team in future, they can come forward and they can understand that this change is really very important for us to see, and they would come. So this is really the start where the leaders would be getting now the return of their hard work, in the sense that people would come and sit with you, discuss with you, try to explore the possibilities, that how this change can be implemented, and this is really the start of your victory. So the people would try to explore the possibilities, they will explore the alternatives. Then some of them would believe that we can make it, let us do it, let us don't get frustrated. And within the team, you would see that some people would be trying to give their very good advices to the others. And too many new ideas would come, a very large number of ideas would come from the team. Now, when this is the time when the leaders should understand that I have created the impact, in the sense that people are now understanding and they are coming with innovative and creative ideas. And this is where the change management would take off. Uh, and decide, people would not be able to decide. You might be having many solutions, many options, many ideas for one problem, but the decision may be very difficult, because there might be different set of people and they might be having different set of decisions. And then some of these decisions, or some of these options, can be really then implemented, and then facilitate the problem and solve and motivate. This is again very important, because the people would come with different solutions, but they would need some resources, and it is the role of the leader to provide them the facilities, and to motivate them to do the whatever resources we can have for that particular problem solution we can allocate, and we should be very frank and very cordial, friendly with them. And then I think the next is your success story, that you would see that people would be forming their team to do their jobs. They would try to understand the complexity of nature. There would be some of them satisfied. The clear focus and plan would be coming forward, and people would try to shake hands with each other, cooperate with each other, join hands with each other, trying to get the commitments mutually, and then you will be able to balance out the frustration and definitely the returns. And some of the team members will be really highly inspiring and highly rewarding, and you have to identify this kind of people, and if possible within the system you would try to give them some rewards, some recognitions. And the clear vision in future will be clear to most of the team members now. So this is the card you see is basically the kind of energy or conflicts, that gradually the conflicts would be very high, and you go down. So, and then again the commitment will be high. So high commitment, high denial in the minimum, then resistance would start, which may not be like denial, but definitely then exploration stage it would go up, and the results would be going up from your commitment, exploration and commitment. Now, this is very important strategy, and I have discussed briefly that you can have different strategies to deal with the different challenges, and this is the time where you can certainly have